Turning on the record. Am I recording? Yes. Okay. So good morning. Today we're going to just kind of do a little bit of review, and as I would like to do a formal service this morning, our monthly prayer for overcoming illness, and so. This morning, what we're going to do is kind of review the blog that I put up earlier this week. And so at the temple, what I did is I passed out index cards. And I don't know if any of y'all just happen to have some index cards sitting by your desk. People don't use index cards so much anymore, I think. Everybody puts it on their phone. But it's kind of important to do this. There is scientific evidence that says that a goal written down and put someplace where you can review it is more likely to be accomplished than a goal that you just set in your head. The writing it down sort of makes it a little bit more concrete. The constant review of it being written down sort of embeds it in your life in a different way than if you just think, oh, I'd like to do this. And did no more than that. So I really do encourage you to do the thing of writing it down and actually putting it up where you can see it. I'm a firm believer of putting stuff on your bathroom mirror to look at and to review. After about a month or so, it's wise to take it down and put something else up because it does become background noise. But for that first month, that note on your mirror, the little Post-it note or index card, if you want to say, yes, okay, got a Post-it note, good for you. That little Post-it note on the mirror is effective. And so I really encourage you to give it a try. Okay, so the first, the first piece of paper or the first index card or the first Post-it note, I'd like for you to write down the 4 elements of nonviolent communication: observation, feelings, needs, and request. And you don't have to make it sloppy like mine. You can make it neat if you want. So observation, feelings, needs, request. Okay? Got it?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Then either on another slip of paper or the back side of an index card, if you're using index cards, I'd like for you to write down empathy and honesty. Okay, so the 4 parts of nonviolent communication are the observation, feelings, needs, and request. And they are done using empathy and honesty. So each of the 4 parts has 2 parts. Isn't that magic how I did that? It's a joke. Okay, so empathy and honesty. So we do each of the 4 parts with empathy and with honesty. Okay? Now, now I'd like for you to make a D list. Okay? A D list. And it is diagnosis, denial, demand, and deserve. These are things we want to avoid. Okay, we want to avoid doing these. These are not skillful things. Diagnosis, denial, demand, and deserve. And I'd like for you to take one day out of the next week. I'll let you decide which day it is. You've got 7 to choose from. Take one day and make it D-Day. Okay? And on D-Day, I'd like for you to listen not as a weapon, but as a tool for you. I'd like for you to listen, when you're listening to the news or watching television news or reading. I'd like for you to look for when diagnosis occurs, when denial occurs, when demand occurs, when deserve occurs. And even listen to your own conversations when you slip into one of these D words: diagnosis, denial, demand, or deserve. You might even, if you have someone you live with, you might listen for when they use these things, but do so in a non-judgmental way. You're only observing when you do this. Just listen. Listen for yourself when you do these words, when you fix somebody else's problem because you're better than they are, when you diagnose their life, when you deny your own responsibility or culpability for something. It's not my fault. There's nothing I can do about it. I have no responsibility here. Well, if you'd only do this, denial sounds sort of like, if you do this, everything would be okay. Or, okay. So if the immigrants didn't come, we'd all have jobs. Well, that's not true. But that's sort of the tenor of the conversation. If we deny that we have any responsibility for something, if we demand that somebody else do something, or even if we demand that we do something ourselves, we shouldn't demand. Actually, we shouldn't, but demand. Or I deserve this. I have a right. I have a right to do whatever it is I do. I'm an American. I can do this. I deserve it. We discovered America. Never mind that there were already people here who've been living quite happily for hundreds of years. You won't have to listen very long to the news to hear these four things, these four practices: diagnosis, denial, demand, deserve. Certainly in the next couple of days with all the politics that are going on. Okay, so pick one day, make it D-Day. What's D-Day? Let me hold the card so you can see it again. Diagnosis, denial, demand, deserve. This is just an observation exercise. Make note. As often as you can during the day. Carry a big, long sheet of paper. Maybe a roll of toilet paper or tissue paper or paper towels to make your D list. And so when and maybe you can't do it the whole day, but try to do it, in a couple of hour blocks throughout the day, and just make a note, quick jot down of the times that you heard these D words or the action of the D words when somebody or yourself made a diagnosis. Well, if they'd only do this, they could fix it. A diagnosis is appropriate in a hospital or a doctor's office. But it's not helpful to conversation. Think about how you feel when somebody fixes your problem. So, well, if you only did this, you'd be happy. Or if you only did that, you'd accomplish this. It's demeaning. It's belittling in a way. Unless we ask for it. If you ask, could you help me with this? Then you kind of expect some diagnosis. But unasked for diagnosis is, I don't like it. And I imagine y'all don't like it either. Do you like to be diagnosed there, Bill?
Oh, no.
No. Especially not unwanted. Trey, I saw you shake your head, so I guess you'd be the same way. We don't need to be fixed by somebody else. We might have all kinds of problems, but what makes them the expert? So Again, if you're seeking assistance or help, that's different than someone just taking the liberty of diagnosing your problems. So spend a day or several hours during the day at different times, however it works for you. But I'd like for you to actually try to make a list and share it with us next week, if you will. Okay. Now, the word for the week is contribution. Okay? This is what you want to paste on your mirror. Just put the word contribution. And every day, try in the morning to remind yourself that the word for the day is contribution. How can you contribute? Okay? At the end of the day, for your own personal goal setting, habit changing, whatever, try to think of the ways that you contributed to conversation, to connection, to empathy and honesty, and nonviolent communication. Oops. Okay, so contribution. That's the word for the week. All right. Questions? No questions? Trey, you have any questions?
Not that I can think of right off.
Okay.
I think I'm getting it.
What's that?
I think I understand the concept.
Okay, yeah. Well, and what if there's any questions about how you would do it or anything like that, it's kind of interesting. Sometimes we can know the meaning of a word, but sometimes be unclear about its application or what we're supposed to do with that meaning. In fact, I'm reading one of Terry Pratchett's earlier books, the first book in the Discworld series. And he talks about, we can understand the individual meaning of the words, but when they're all put together, sometimes we need the individual meaning of the words isn't so helpful to understand the concept of the collected words together. So, how was your week this last week as far as nonviolent communication? We had needs. We talked about needs last week, and any feedback, any thoughts, any reflections from the past week?
I have some.
Okay.
We had the needs lists, and I didn't actually have a copy of it handy, but I was able to actually express, needs a little better with myself, like we had discussed.
Yeah.
I started trying to practice the nonviolent communication with myself, just kind of be mindful of the fact that I am really rough on myself sometimes.
Yeah.
So I started recognizing that, I have, needs to, I guess, to, be more compassionate toward myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's really you could define it in one word sort of need, but I have been trying to do a lot of observation of my thought process and integrate that in. I'm angry right now. What do I need from this?
You are angry right now, or in that moment you were angry?
In that moment, yes.
Okay.
I'll be in a moment and I'm experiencing anger or a lot of maybe resentment or sadness, and I'm like, what am I needing to get from this? So then I have to start thinking about how I'm talking to myself, and then I have to start thinking about then moving on to the next part at the end there, the request, which I haven't really got that good at yet.
Right.
I need you to be more compassionate with yourself, Trey. But yeah, that's kind of how I've been working with it.
Well, that's good. That's really very good. We are oftentimes very, very rough on ourselves. And at the same time, we're sometimes, even while we're being rough, we're extremely lenient. And so, how can we find a more compassionate middle ground? You know, but knowing it's happening, that's wonderful. You know.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you're saying when it comes to the knowing it and what to do about it part. That's where the request comes into play, and I have to kind of figure out how to talk to myself a little better on that.
Yeah.
Because you're
Yes.
right, leniency is easy. It's kind of like, well, I'm feeling this and I'm seeing it. That's good enough for the moment. And yeah, it's not really a complete process. So
Yeah. Well, that's really good. As you do this, this is not something that we just normally happen to do. Most of us, myself included, before I even heard this stuff, it's like, I didn't know what to do with all that stuff. Very early on, when we talked about the 3-column journal, which, by the way, is anybody still doing the 3-column journal?
A little, not perfect.
Well, perfect. We're not looking for perfection here.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself. None of us is perfect. Because again, what I was hoping is that we would have some reflection at the end of the year about what took place, any changes that took place over the course of these last couple of months of the year. So again, I'm encouraging you to keep on going with the 3-column journal. But when I first began this series, I talked about driving while enlightened, or enlightenment while driving. And at first it was just, for me, it was just a matter of not getting angry, and that was just suppressing. It's like, okay, I'm just not going to express my anger. It's still there. I have it inside of me, but I'm not showing it. Well, that may be an improvement. It could be debatable. I think it's certainly better than flipping somebody off and, breaking the horn, honking at somebody. My mother always said, if you've got time to honk, you've got time to put on your brakes. But so visibly, that may look like a big change. It's just a shift, though, from expressing it outward to keeping it bottled up internally. And so what do we do with that? And in a way, nonviolent communication helped me process that. It's a lot of it I'd already been processing before I had the actual words and the tools of nonviolent communication. I already began to realize that I don't know anything about this situation, except that I want to be safe. I don't want to be in an accident. I don't know that the guy is a jerk. I don't know that he's inconsiderate. I do know that, he did what he did, or she did what she did. But beyond that, I don't know anything. And that gets into the observation without assigning value or judgment, diagnosing, So, and then, what's my responsibility? What's my role in that? Well, my role in that is to protect myself. I can't deny my responsibility for my own safety. If there's something that I can do, I should do it, and not deny that I don't have a responsibility. So I have a responsibility to put on my brakes. I have a responsibility to manage my car in such a way that we avoid an accident, even if that other person may have been the cause. I have a responsibility to my own safety to do what I can to avoid the accident. I can't deny that. Well, I mean, I could, but it's not effective. So that's how we often we don't think about these D words and what role they have in our own way of processing situations in life. We have a I deserve carefree driving experience. Well, not without my own participation in that, Now, it's true, there was a time in my life when I would tell my partner, someday I'm going to get a car with a battering ram on the front and just plow over everybody. Because I deserve a carefree driving experience. That's a little bit ludicrous, I know. But it was an honest thought. There were times. Anybody else ever thought that too? Or am I the only one? Okay. All right, Bill, how was your week with nonviolent communication?
Good. There were two things that I think in particular stood out. One of them was actually a lack of, I'm not a huge exaggerator anyway, I don't think anyway, but leaving out words.
That's a huge exaggeration, Bill.
Leaving out words like very and stuff like that, particularly typing, it just it doesn't add anything, and so much that it's kind of pointless. So that was one, just sticking, like you said, sticking to the facts and speech, and that would be it. The other, actually, yesterday, with the martial arts, we did some moves that were basically the thing was extreme aggression, and that's something that I guess actually something to come in terms with, because it's been half the time, calming myself, not half the time, a lot of time calming myself down over the years, and it's usually listed as a negative, but when the point is to protect, I mean, that's the whole point of the martial arts. I think the result is the mental discipline is something that you get out of that, and the conditioning you get out of it. But, actually practicing the aggression can be difficult, but if you ever actually need it to protect somebody, or, if something is happening, it actually can be useful. Mm-hmm. Controlling it. But that was an interesting little thought process I had on there, because to me, to actually go through the drill, and this is just, it wasn't sparring, it was just somebody holding mitts and pads and just blasting and continuing on, and it was kind of disconcerting to do, but it also in a real life situation, if anything were to happen like that, it would be appropriate for the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, part of the practice, I mean, having been in the military and gone through the training, part of the practice is so that when you're threatened and this fight or flight triggers, the aggression begins as a protective, you need to know what to do.
Right.
So, part of your training is so that you don't have to think about it. You don't have to plan it. You don't have to come up with a plan in the spur of the moment when you're not at your best self mentally.
Right.
I mean, when this fight or flight gets triggered and your survival mode, and, I don't know if it's so much aggression as it is protection, self-preservation, which could look aggressive. And if you don't turn off self-preservation, it certainly can become very aggressive, which, as you know, is not necessarily beneficial all the time. But your training prior to that experience is what enables you to do that. And in a way, that's what having a C word on your mirror is all about, is ingraining it in you. Contribution. Oh, today I'm going to figure out what I can contribute, how I can contribute. Thinking about, as we're engaging in nonviolent communication with ourselves and with others, how can we do it empathetically, and honestly? Don't exaggerate. Think about contribution. How can our conversation contribute honestly and empathetically? See, all of these things are all tied together. So in a way, this is This is your martial arts training for the week for conversation, contribution. So that when you're talking, if we keep doing this, and I know it's tedious, and I know it's hard. It's, we have, well, each of you are have your own various ages. I've been doing it I've had a lot of practice, not communicating nonviolently for 70 years. So I've got lots of practice on the other side. And so to turn it around to change it is going to take a lot of effort. It can be done. And when we get better at it and just doing it. So Trey, do you find it a little bit easier to reflect on what your feelings are in the moment?
Yeah, actually, I do.
Yeah.
I've become a lot more aware of them because I'm trying to stay, skillful in my approach to this sort of thing, recognizing and processing, allowing myself to feel them so I don't repress them. And this kind of invites me to actually be much more aware of them because I'm noticing them kind of coming and going rather than just holding on to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So as you're thinking about your conversation, you do it empathetically. Be kind and gentle to yourself, but honest. So yeah, own that. Yes, I felt angry. I felt hurt. We don't have to deny it. And we're not really diagnosing it. We're not saying, well, I shouldn't feel anger. Why not? Anger's a legitimate emotion or feeling. And rather than diagnose it, or certainly not diagnose someone else's anger, but find out what our needs are. What do I need to not feel angry? And so you've only had the needs list for a week, so it takes time. Be kind, be gentle on yourself, and just realize that even if you only caught it once in the past week, that's more than you probably were ever doing before. So if you do it twice or 3 times or 4 times, then wow, that's huge. And that's not an exaggeration. So, pardon me. Didn't put the mute on time. All right. Well, again, this morning we're going to be doing our monthly prayer for overcoming illness. But before we go into the service, any final thoughts or comments from either of you all? Questions about this process?
So you recommend to tape the contribution card to like our mirror, or somewhere we'll see it every day.
Yeah.
And then to use it alongside of the observation, feeling, needs, and requests.
Yes.
And when doing this, remember to retain empathy and honesty in our approach. Right?
Yes.
I got okay. I've been trying to do index cards and notes, so I was making sure.
Okay, yeah. So the empathy, honesty, in employing observation, feelings, needs, requests, and those are tied together. That's how we do this, and so I figure that you can tape this up too. You could cover your whole mirror with Post-it notes or index cards, whatever you need to do. But the word for the week is contribution. Now, if you're eating off paper plates, you could just take a stack of paper plates and write contribution down the center of each of your paper plates for the week, and you could do that. I'll be honest, I never, ever used paper plates before. But since I've moved here, I do use paper plates sometimes. you know, or paper towel. Because I just don't want to wash the dishes for a simple meal, and I have to keep everything washed because I have a mouse somewhere. So, and then have a D-Day. Okay, one day of the week, have a D-Day. Try to do this seriously, at least for a little while during the day. Oops, let me see if I can get this straight. And then share that with us the next week. You know, write down a couple of instances where you heard a diagnosis, a denial, a demand, or a deserve. And maybe just a little tally sheet of in 1 hour, I heard this. Or when I watched the news or listened to the news, I heard one of these D concepts 25 times. This is kind of like being self-aware, a self-awareness, turning on the light bulb, opening your eyes to when you hear these. And if you catch yourself doing them, either to yourself or to someone else, own them, be honest, but be empathetic. Be kind to yourself, be gentle. None of us is perfect. Oh, and I want to just come back to Bill's exaggeration, you know, the very. Yeah, that's a word with no value. You know, in fact, in writing, they discourage. I mean, it's you're not supposed to, but it would be better if you left off very. If you have to describe something, come up with another word that would be very whatever it is, or just drop the word very as a non-value adding word. I'm not good at that. It's difficult to do when you're writing, you know, because I try to avoid the use of amazing or awesome. You know, the Milky Way is awesome. The Grand Canyon is awesome. That birthday party was probably not awesome. You know, the night out with the guys was not awesome compared to the Milky Way or the Grand Canyon. You know. Okay, so enough of that. Thoughts, comments, any others? No? Okay. All right. Well, let us, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording now as we get ready to do our service for overcoming illness. Thank you both, and thank you to anyone who watches this at a later time, such as Neil or Davey when we get around to it. Okay?